Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin, and this is episode 495. I'm joined today, not by my co-host Stacy, is actually traveling currently. He is on vacation. So I'm going solo. I'm going to talk about what the Knicks have facing them tonight in Game 4. But before I do that, I do have to make a few announcements. First being that Strickland has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are and haven't done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website at www.strick.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store. There's all kinds of cool stuff that you can find in there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it. We've got it. Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, this podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes from Reviews Bozos, a podcast hosted by Andrew Steele, aka Doug, along with Zach Blatter, and you get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 here that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod where I rant and rave with the next Memorial. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Merida, one of the best in the business, and you get access to Strictly NFL, which you guessed is a podcast with the NFL that is hosted by Konstantin Metrikos and Desmond Novak. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and a $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits, like listening on pod recordings and merchandise discounts, and potentially co-host a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this possible without you. So, without further ado, the Knicks obviously get smoked in Game 3, 115-93. The game was basically done and dusted even before halftime, but certainly by halftime. The second half was pretty bad. Not bad in the sense that, the game score didn't really change. It's not like the Knicks went down 40, but, they were never really able to make a run to get back in the game. Defense got better. Offense stays really struggling for any type of rhythm outside of, anything. They've just not been able to score effectively in the half court at all in this series, and they're going to have to find a way to loosen that up, loosen up the Celtics defense, and, not just generate quality shots, but then eventually make them. They're just not shooting a good percentage either. So it is what it is. They've got to figure that out, and they've got to get better on that end. But, the defense obviously is the biggest key to making this a rock fight, making this a series. And the Knicks have some serious questions that they need to answer in terms of how they want to approach this, because we are now, we've played 9 playoff games so far, okay? And the Knicks starting 5 continues to struggle. It is what it is at this point. This is just reality. This has been reality for a while. I looked it up yesterday, including playoffs and regular season since January 1st. The Knicks starting 5 basically has a minus 3.2 net rating cumulatively over that time. So far in this playoffs, just the playoffs alone, according to Basketball Reference, the Knicks starters have played 212 minutes, 18 seconds. They have a minus 8.2 net rating in that time. This is just not a good lineup right now. And there are a lot of reasons why I think that is the case. I think defensively, that combination has not thrived. They've struggled to contain the point of attack. Cat obviously at the 5 is not ideal. And Brunson, who's I think really competed well defensively in this series, he's obviously like a defender that can be taken advantage of, right? And look, for the most part, Josh Hart, for all the things he's good at, he's very susceptible to significant bozo moments on defense. Overhelping, flying out at shooters, so basically closing poorly. There are times he gets blown by, which happens to everybody. Not going to say that's a major problem for him, but definitely one that has occurred. I think he's probably been the guy who struggled the most with Jaylen Brown in this series, which is weird. In the sense that, I think even Brunson's held up better on Jaylen Brown than Josh Hart. So I don't know. I think, I'm not trying to act like he's been getting burned in this series, and I don't want to overreact too much to one game, but I'm just trying to highlight some of the season-long issues that I think have occurred defensively with that starting five. Um, and offensively, they've just not. They've continued to struggle, and that's been the case again since January 1st. Prior to that, they were great, but since January 1st, they've really struggled. And I think January 3rd is when they played OKC. And, they were one of the first teams to really just fully commit to putting Josh Hart or putting their center on Josh Hart, a wing on Cat, and, kind of condensing the floor that way, using Josh Hart's, the center, who's nominally defending Josh Hart, to kind of, play deeper into the paint, not be happy to concede threes or open looks for Josh Hart if that's the case. So teams are funneling the ball to him in a lot of ways. And I thought the Celtics did a really good job of that in game 3, of funneling the ball to Josh Hart. If he's not hitting on threes, which he did not do in game 3, it becomes a struggle. It does become a struggle against a defense that's this good. And on top of that, the Knicks haven't been proactive about using Josh Hart as an off-ball screener, which I think is a way to help keep the offense flowing and utilize kind of teams treating him like a non-spacer to create open or better looks for guys like OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, who, flat out, they got to shoot better. There's nothing else to say. Like, those guys have to shoot better. OG could give you something on offense. Basically gave you nothing in game 3. I think he had 2 points. They need to get more and more consistently out of those guys. They need them to just knock down shots to some degree, pure and simple. But with all that being said, they haven't done these things. The Knicks haven't used Josh Hart as an off-ball screener. They don't have a lot of motion at this point in that starting lineup, which sucks because that was actually one of the great things about watching that starting lineup at the beginning of the season, where the offense was really free-flowing. But that has ground down to a halt. And also, again, you are playing playoff defenses are better. Detroit had a pretty good defense. Boston has a much better defense. So, you're going to have to fight for this stuff anyway, and you have to tip your cap to your opponent to some degree. But the Knicks are, this offense is very, very simplistic, and that's what it is. I think it's simplistic, and Boston is well prepared for it. They've been well prepared for the starting five all season. That's just not been a very winning lineup for the Knicks in matchups against Boston. And that kind of brings me to my next point where, whatever the Knicks struggles are here in this series and whatever their starting five struggles have been in the series, they are up 2-1. And they have an opportunity now to steal this series. Now, going into the season, I did not think the Knicks could beat Boston in a series. Going into the playoffs, I certainly was less optimistic about their odds of doing that. But here we are. They're up 2-1. And within that 2-1, they have not had a single good offensive performance so far in this series. They've been held under 100 points 2 consecutive games now. They only hit 100 in regulation in game 1. So points are at a premium for New York. And, you've got to, they have to find a way to do it. But again, that starting lineup has not been good. And I keep harping on this because when you're up 2-1, you have a chance as an underdog at home, your home crowd in game 4 to, not get back home court because the Knicks still have home court, but effectively guarantee that you have a chance, worst case scenario, to close out the series in game 6 at home. Giving yourself that guaranteed opportunity is a big deal. And if the Knicks, to me, this should be viewed as a must-win game for the New York. Again, I'm trying to phrase this properly because, even coming into the series, obviously, like I said, I was definitely not optimistic about the Knicks' chances. When you steal 2 on the road, especially the way the Knicks did, it kind of changes the calculus of the series. And while I understood why Book still had Boston as a favorite, despite losing the first two at home and going to New York for games 3 and 4. I understood why they were still the favorite. And I think obviously we saw that on Saturday where, the Knicks don't have a margin for error, and that can be in the form of, kind of, how you use your personnel, the groupings, tactically what you're doing, and then of course player execution. We're going to get to player execution because that was a major issue in Game 3. But in looking at this series again, the personnel usage can be better, and we've talked about this all year. I think people are keenly aware of everything that we know what the issues are with this team. We know what the lineup stuff looks like and what it doesn't look like. But what we didn't have for a lot of the year was Mitchell Robinson. Mitchell Robinson was working his way back. He obviously didn't get back in late in the season. And then, you're very limited in how much time he's able to play and kind of seeing how it all looks. If you look through all the Knicks the best 5-man lineups they played in this postseason, Mitchell Robinson, in the most of the top 10 most played lineups the Knicks have used, all of their most positive groupings involve Mitchell Robinson. OG, Mitch, Brunson, Hart, Mitchell Robinson have played 35 minutes. They're plus 11.4 net rating. OG, Brunson, Hart, McBride, Mitchell Robinson. They played 26 minutes, plus 24.7 net rating. I mean, this is the funniest one because it's clearly just from game one of the Pistons series. But anyway, I will read it. Bridges, McBride, Campaign, Mitch Robinson, Karl Towns, 14 minutes, 50 seconds, plus 38.1 net rating. It's there. Like, he is having a massive impact on this team's fortune in the playoffs. And especially in this series. The Knicks have really only been able to not just get a foothold in the game, but make runs when Mitchell Robinson's on the floor. And the Celtics are terrified of him to the point that they've been intentionally fouling him for much of the series to play him off the floor. Well, if this is a must-win game, and it should be treated as such, I believe, because you have the chance still to at least give yourself an opportunity to close the series at home, and then you get 3 straight shots out, really, to close out the series. You always take you always want that at least. But they're so terrified of him, they're fouling him to get him off the floor and they're willing to put the Knicks in the bonus. Well, I think it's time to start Mitchell Robinson, and I think it's time to start Mitchell Robinson because if that's their way of playing him off the floor, you got to take that. You got to make them earn it. If they want to commit 4 fouls at the start of a game just to get us in the penalty and, have us consider pulling Mitchell Robinson from the floor at that point, I'm happy to take that because there are a couple of things that are going to happen. One, they have to play the rest of the first quarter, in the bonus, and the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter. If you start them each quarter in these quarters, and this is how they operate, it's going to get them into foul trouble as a team, obviously, but individuals have to take these fouls. So that becomes a problem. And I mean, if they choose to not foul, then great. Then you have the opportunity to play lineups with Mitchell Robinson that have been significantly better throughout the playoffs than the ones without him. And we have evidence that the starting 5 is not particularly strong. Like, it's just not been a good group now for months. And again, there are a lot of reasons for it that we can talk about and dive into, but I think that's best safe for the offseason because right now it is what it is, right? That lineup is what it is. That's the reality. It's not been a good lineup. It hasn't been a good lineup for a while, and that's what the Knicks have to deal with. That said, realistically, if you look at the team, whoever you think deserves or doesn't deserve to start or whatever, whatever change you're going to make, you got to be realistic about it. Brunson's obviously not getting benched. Towns is obviously not going to get benched. OG Anunoby cannot be benched. Mikal Bridges is not going to be benched. It's Josh Hart that would have to make way for Mitchell Robinson in the starting lineup. I think there are times where he's getting singled out for some of the issues, again, that starting group has had offensively, that at this point, I feel like it's not just about Josh Hart. It's not just about the fact that he's being defended like a non-spacer. And again, I think those issues are best served being talked about after the season, because at this point, there's nothing to be said that has not been said about the starting five. So I don't really feel like I need to explain that any further, and everybody has their own reasons for why they think it's struggling. The reality is it's struggling. So it is what it is. I think you put Mitch Robinson in for Josh Hart, and Josh will give you plenty of juice off the bench, and you've likely probably strengthened many of your lineups purely based on how these rotations would unfold, and the fact that you're breaking up your least productive lineup that's playing the most minutes. It's it's played by far the most minutes, and I don't want to make net rating be the end all be all, but when you see a trend like this so stark over months, you got to trust that the long-term trend supersedes any individual game run that group might make together. Because what it's telling us is, over the long sample, that lineup is just not going to be good. It's not going to be good, right? Or maybe it can be good. I think there are clearly ways that it can be good, but it's not good right now, right? It's just not. So you benefit from breaking that up, and benefit there naturally because of how you're going to have to change your rotations and subs, that you're much more likely now to play more of your positive lineup combinations more often. I think that's a big deal. I think that's a really big deal. And this is your chance. I think you have to roll the dice here. And if what I will say is, I know there have been people that have been clamoring for this, even when the Knicks were up 2-0. And I understand why that was the case. I don't even disagree why that was the case. I just think it's very tough as a coach to make that change in a series when you're up 2-0. And you're likely, again, once you make this type of adjustment, that's the Knicks' biggest move that they could possibly make in this series. It's the biggest move they could possibly make, because again, it's their what other change would you make, right? I think it's safe to say, whether anybody agrees or disagrees, Tibbs isn't going to put Deuce McBride in for Josh Hart in the starting lineup. Like that, I just don't think he sees them as the same caliber of players, which I get. And we can talk about the lineup data all we want. I think there's also some, I don't want to say political, but Josh Hart has been a stalwart for you. He has played a lot of minutes for you. He's been there over the last couple of years consistently. Even when the team is beat up, even when he's beat up, he makes himself available for the team. I think it's harder for him to buy into, I'm going to the bench for Deuce McBride, and stuff like that matters as well. I think it's a lot easier of a sell with Mitch Robinson. You can call it matchup or whatever, but also I think Mitch has more cachet, and the numbers are the numbers. I think you can, that I think is a little easier to sell, and kind of not have any issues internally in the locker room, ego wise or anything. But yeah, this is his big button. This is his big adjustment for the series. And if it works, great. Awesome. If it doesn't, I'm fine with that, because I think you have to take the chance. And if it works, and if the Celtics figure out, if they kind of get better at playing against the double big lineup or whatever, and maybe you still win game 4, but then they win game 5, and they figured it out, and you don't really have other lineup adjustments you can get to, and they ultimately end up winning the series, then so be it. So be it. But I think you have to push that button now. I think if you wait, you've maybe waited too long. I don't know. It's pretty simple. That's what it is to me. So I'm sympathetic to why Thibodeau didn't change the starting lineup going into game 3. Should it have been changed before that? I mean, you know, again, a conversation we've had many times, and it really isn't worth debating anymore. It wasn't. Okay, it's simple as that. It just wasn't. So that was our starting lineup all year. Maybe it should have a change should have been made before. It didn't. Could you have made subs earlier in games and reduced them? You know, we can get into all that, and you know, Lord knows we have. But yeah, like you can play that game and go back and kind of want to retcon all this stuff, but it didn't happen. It's what it is. So yeah, I get why he didn't break it up at 2-0, but I think that game on Saturday, should have been a real wake-up call, and I think gives you the perfect opportunity and reasoning to make this type of lineup change. You know, it's really pretty simple to me. That's like that's what it is to me. So I get why he didn't make the move before. I think he has to make it now. I think it should be Mitchell Robinson that comes into the starting lineup. And I think Josh Hart going to the bench is would really benefit the Knicks and potentially benefit Josh Hart as well. So we'll see if Tibbs pushes the button. You know, end of the day, I think Boston has more talent right now. I think they have better depth right now. I think they also know themselves better than the Knicks know themselves. So for them, adjustments I think are a lot easier to come by, and they have more stuff that they can kind of point to that has worked for them. Partially because they have mixed and matched more in the regular season as well. Something we know that Tibbs did not do very much of this season, and in general is not his priority during the regular season. And so to get back to that, I know that Boston's I think they are a better team. I think they have better talent. I think they know themselves better, all that stuff. You have to give yourself the best chance you can, and you've earned this opportunity to potentially, again, win game 4, have a 3-1 lead, and then you need to win one of 3 games and one of your next 3 games and you're in. You would take anybody that's being objective would have taken that prior to the series, regardless of how the rest of the series turns out. If I told you the Knicks were holding a 3-1 lead against Boston, you'd be saying, no way, that's not, what drugs are you on, right? Like, I wouldn't have thought that. I thought this was going to be a 6-game series at best for the Knicks. That's what I thought. I predicted Knicks in 6, and honestly, that was like a little bit because I was just like, I just can't in good faith. Or sorry, I didn't pick Knicks in 6. I picked Celtics in 6. But that was partially because I just couldn't in good faith pick, as a fan, I'm just like, no, I'm not picking Boston in 5. That's insulting. It's gross, even if I feel that that's the most likely outcome. It's gross. But the Knicks have a chance now to go 3-1. They have that opportunity. And if I told you that before the series, anybody would have taken that. So this is it. This is the biggest game of the year. I thought this was more important than Saturday. I should rephrase. I thought the Knicks, I did not have a good feeling going into that game 3. That felt like Boston's going to come out and, they're going to hit some shots at least. The Knicks made it too easy for them to hit some shots. Again, I will talk about that. But I did not have a good feeling about that. I think this was the game. If you're going to split, you split the homestand. This was the game for me that I kind of felt, yeah, if you're going to get one, this is the one. I think this is the one. And they need to treat it like that. This is the most important game, maybe not just of this season, but of the Tibbs era in a lot of ways. Of this little Leon Tibbs renaissance that we've had. This is the biggest game. And I think it requires and calls for their biggest adjustment possible. So those are my thoughts on that. The defense. I don't know what to say. Karl Anthony Towns was just bad in this game on defense. I think he was executing the wrong coverages. There's been a lot of talk about this. Why were they back in drop? I don't think they were supposed to be in drop. I think Towns fucked up his coverages, and they got burned. I'm not going to put that on Tibbs. I think Towns fucked that up straight up. And then on top of that, there's a lot of sloppy execution from the Knicks. I know after the game, Brunson and Josh Hart and Bridges all talked about, I think they all mentioned like we didn't have the right sense of urgency or whatever. There was a lot of conversation about that. I don't care about it, to be honest, in the sense like I think that was athlete speak. That's that's them saying we just got to try harder. I think it's easier to say that than explain how Karl-Anthony Towns is screwing every pick and roll coverages, explaining why you started wildly doubling unnecessarily on post-ups against Brunson when they have not done that in this series, or at least have been better about it when they do it, which is where it comes down to me, more about execution. I thought game 3 as a group, their execution to the finer details was not as good. And on top of that, I think Boston switched up a few things for them or on them that gave them a little trouble. I thought they were really purposeful in game 3 if you watch game 1 and 2, Brunson's man's often in the corner and, OG and Tatum, right? Well, most half the time they're on the ball. So whichever one isn't on the ball would often be in perfect position to help in the gaps, as was Josh Hart. And I thought they did a good job of this game having Brunson's man spotting up above the break on the wing. And so Brunson has to cover the gaps. And I thought that was good adjustment from them. The Knicks need to find a way to counter that or just execute it better and get more from Brunson on that end, or how they want to guard the point of attack and how they want to defend the roll or the pop man. Like, they have to figure that out. But yeah, I thought that was a good adjustment from Boston and Joe Mazzulla. And quite frankly, they also just hit shots. Like they did. They had a great shooting game. I think they got into rhythm early because of the Knicks' sloppy execution. I thought, again, the first half was, good God, Karl-Anthony Towns. I just can't. He screwed up so many pick and roll coverages in that game. And I feel like the Knicks got burned every single time he did. It was walk in 3 for Tatum, walk in 3 for Tatum. Okay, Towns is so far off. Tatum gets in the paint. Then he kicks, spray. Now you got the Knicks in rotation. Like, it was too easy. It was too easy. And he wasn't good enough. They can't have that. They cannot have that. They cannot win a game losing everything you can control on defense. You can't lose it that way. They lost control of kind of the pace of the game, the flow of the game, in a way that I don't think they ever did in games 1 and 2. So, yeah, I don't know. I kind of am a little bit lost for words at how he could have screwed up the defensive coverages that badly. Another reason, by the way, to have start Mitch. Like, whatever you say about Mitch, he is become pretty smart, I think, in terms of his execution of defensive coverages, and also he's a good communicator now, which I think that really helps. I don't know if they've had that voice defensively all season without him, and certainly I don't think they've had that voice defensively in the starting lineup all season. So, Mitchell Robinson will help if that happens. But Cat has to be better, because they're going to, no matter where you put Cat, at the 4, at the 5, whatever, they're going to find ways to bring him into action, pick and roll actions, and he's going to have to defend it. And if the Knicks want to switch, great. If they want to hedge and then recover, great. But it has to be clean, and it has to be executed with absolute maximum precision. Because if it is not, Boston will make you pay. They'll make you pay. They will make you pay. Like, this has been a historically great offense now for an extended period of time. I fucking hate watching it. it's very, very boring to me. That's neither here nor there. They're an extremely good offense. And yes, I think there are issues they have in tight game situations because of their lack of a quality or a high level, I should say, ball handler initiator. And I think that's why they can get bogged down and you can kind of get them into lazy chucking threes offense late in close games. But you have to get them into a close game. And you're not going to get them into a close game if you spend the entire fucking first quarter and second quarter letting them walk into threes. Sloppy execution of your scheme, right? Like not and not executing your scheme and to your principles consistently. Like we know the Knicks want to switch more, right? So execute those switches cleanly. Meet the player high when he's coming off the screen. You have to be clean about that stuff. We know that they're trying to force Boston into one-on-one situations. Trust you have to play to that. And what I mean by that is if you see, like if the Knicks are going to double, in certain situations, know what those situations are. There was a play early in the first quarter in game 3 where Brown gets the ball kind of in transition and he's, has the ball with his back turned against Bridges around the elbow area. A little bit higher, maybe. Top of the key even. And just inside the top of the key, I should say. Inside the arc. At the top of the key. There we go. And Josh Hart just helps off of his man, which is Drew Holiday on the right wing, basically one pass away. For no reason. Like there's no threat there. There's no immediate threat to anything that's happening there. He cheats towards Jaylen Brown and completely loses sight of Drew Holiday. Brown swings it to Holiday, and then Josh Hart just jumps back out wildly, closes out wildly. Drew pump fakes, drives. He gets into the paint, has the easiest 2 points he's going to ever score in a playoff game. And stuff like that was happening all the time. Like I love Josh Hart. I thought he had a terrible game. I thought he had a terrible game, and I thought it was a destructive game. He had a couple of attempts at the rim that were hopeless. That they were dead on arrival. There was one against Luke Cornett in the first half where as soon as he went up, I was like, no shot there. He got absolutely stonewalled. I thought he had the play in the first quarter where he drove and he lands on his back, so maybe that he was a little hurt or whatever after that play. Do I think that he got fouled on it? Yes. But I think even if he got it, I think the foul there would have bailed him out versus him drawing an actual good foul with a good play. I thought that was a bad play. And, they don't call a foul and they're off to the races. They get an easy buck the other way. He had a couple of those, like where he's, there's one I think where he's like coming in for offensive rebound wildly, completely misses it, and then they're out running. Like I just thought he had a terrible game. And again, I don't believe he's singularly the issue with the starting lineup. But if we're being realistic, just in terms of like who has to sacrifice, it's always going to be Josh Hart. It's not going to be any of those other guys in terms of adjustment for a playoff series. And just to go back to that really quick, even if you're not going to start Mitch, just bring him in much earlier in games, much earlier in each quarter, even. I would just make that. I think that's so important for them. Anyway, but yeah, Josh Hart, he just had a terrible game 3. And in game 2, he was maybe one of the biggest reasons they won the game. He was fantastic. He was the leading scorer. I thought his defense was pretty locked in, and I thought offensively, he was 3 of 6 from 3. And that wasn't just the shots that he made. I just thought he played really smart. I thought he played very clean, and he gave them everything that you could have asked for. And I thought game 1, he played a really good game too. We don't need to, I thought he played as well as you could expect in those first 2 Boston games. Then he played terribly in game 3. And it's worth noting that even when he was playing well in games 1 and 2, the starting lineup still wasn't that effective. So, I don't think this is always about Josh Hart. There are times he's good and that lineup is still not good, right? So, I guess you can't argue that's about Josh Hart. But I mean, I'm saying more that I don't want to pin that entirely on him individually. I think there's more going on there than that. But we don't need to. I mean, that's a problem for another day. We can argue about that later. Make the adjustment now. This is your chance. If I told you, like, forget even before the season, if I told you before the season the Knicks would be up 2-1 against Boston in the second round with Game 4 on their home court in the second round of the playoffs, any of us would have signed up for that opportunity, that situation at the start of the year. I don't even think that's a question. Well, we maybe would have been wondering why is the series happening in the second round, in the conference finals? What's happened? What's happened is that Cleveland turned into a 65-win regular season juggernaut who completely crapped their pants yesterday. Man, what a beatdown that was. What a performance by our long-time nemesis, the Indiana Pacers. Either way, yes. But yeah, like, we all would have signed up for that opportunity. So, I think, again, this is you have your chance to steal the series. You have that chance. So give yourself the best opportunity. But yeah, defensively, again, like, I Cat was really bad. I thought Hart was destructive. And I thought, OG, especially in the second half, I think he got frustrated with Cat, and he wasn't necessarily as locked in as he's been through much of the series. I actually thought Brunson had a pretty solid defensive game. I thought Bridges had a solid defensive game. But I'll tell you what Bridges didn't have was a good or confident-looking shooting performance from the floor, especially in the first half. Like, I can't tell you how frustrating it was watching that first half. And, they're credit to Tibbs here. He's actually drawing up plays now to run for McCall, and I'm not calling them the most innovative plays of all time. Maybe not even the plays that are best suited for him, but he's giving him opportunities here. And multiple times, either be it in a triple handoff situation or pick and roll that he's running, where he comes off the screen and he has the opportunity to pull up for a three. One thing they're actually doing for him, which is really nice, is they've set these screens higher up the floor, it feels like, which is good. Gives him more runway. But, if you're going to take a pull-up, that's your opportunity there to take a pull-up three, but he won't take it. And then he's taking an extra dribble inside the arc, and then he's taking another extra dribble inside the arc, and then by that time, his man's recovered back in front of him or can make a play on the ball from behind. He turned the ball over twice because of stuff like that. Like, shoot the fucking ball. Shoot the ball. That's it. Like, it's not that complicated. Shoot the fucking ball. And shoot it with confidence. Like, the Knicks need him to score. So if he misses a couple of shots, no one's going to get on him on the team, right? No one's going to be like, oh my God, stop shooting, bro. No, they need him to score. And we know he can score. He had 14 points in the fourth quarter of game 2. But it can't be 0-0-0 and then 14. Like, they need him to show up in these first halves. They need him to. And he's got to understand that and play with confidence offensively. Defensively, I think he's giving you everything he's got. He's really raised his game on that side of the ball. And, whatever we think about the trade, part of the calculation was you're going to get a two-way wing. An elite one at that. And for much of the regular season, certainly didn't feel that way. Well, that's changed in the playoffs. He's playing a lot more physicality. I think he's competing better, fighting over screens, getting over screens. Being physical as physical as he can be. Obviously, he's not the strongest guy in the world, but he's using his physicality well. He's been active in the passing lanes. He's been active making plays on the ball in general, steals, blocks, whatever. But yeah, it has to be better offensively from him. Like, he has to score and contribute and be in these games at a higher level and at a more consistent level than he's been. And not just in the playoffs. He's just not been good against Boston for a lot of this season. He's got to be able to raise his game offensively to match the opponent. They need that from him. He's got to do it. If they want to have a chance to not just win this game, but win the series, he has to get it. He has to be better offensively. He has to be. I think it counts a lot. I think it's a credit to him that he did have that 14-point outburst in game 2 in the fourth quarter. And, those stretches like that, having the ability to have a stretch like that in you matters a lot, but it cannot just be that stretch. You have to be contributing throughout the game offensively. It cannot just, happen in the second half or whatever. It's got to happen more. Then it's got to happen earlier in games and more consistently. And then OG Anunoby, I mean, what else is there to say? He's been fantastic defensively. I think he's really playing his fucking ass off. Offensively, since game one, it's been rough going. He basically may as well have not been on the floor yesterday, or on Saturday, rather. Offensively, anyway. And the Knicks need to do a better job of getting him going. They've got to find ways to get him open shots, get him opportunities to get downhill into the paint. And he's got to take better shots, too. These step backs where he looks like he's about to collapse have not been good. They're also just not shots that we need. So, yeah, Knicks need to do a better job of getting him involved, and he has to do a better job of making better decisions when he does get the ball and does have opportunities. I do think that he's had a couple of drives to hoop that have been ridiculous no calls. I mean, there was one in game 3 that was truly atrocious. I have no idea how they didn't call it. I think it was on Hal Horford in the first half. Yes, in the first half. But yeah, he's got to be more involved. He's got to be more involved. And Jalen Brunson, I think he's done the right thing in this series of coming out to start these games and not trying to just impose his will right from the beginning. I think he's trying to get, set Cat up as best as he can. I think he's trying to give Mikal and OG opportunities to kind of get into the game early. I think this is not the game for that. This is, Brunson big game type thing. That I think is necessary. They need him to come out and set the tone in a way. But more than anything, he's the only consistent thing about their offense, really, at this point. He's really the only consistent thing about their offense. So this is a game where he needs to come out. He needs to assert himself right from the beginning. And then, off of that, then let's start. Okay, let's set up Bridges here. Let's get OG a touch. Let's get Cat going. Whatever it is. But he needs to come out strong, really strong in this game. They're going to need that. I think hopefully the hope would be if he gets off to a decent start in this game. And I did think he figured out some stuff with how Boston was defending him as a team, and also how he can get shots off and what shots he should get against various matchups, right? Be it Drew or Derek White or whatever. I thought he figured out a lot of stuff in game 3. Well, let's bring that to the 4 here in game 4. And let's start right from the beginning. And then, yeah, hopefully that can open up the floor for other guys, right? Because they're giving him more attention. And, now those guys are maybe getting better shots, getting better opportunities to get easier shots, even just at the rim or clean looks from 3, whatever. But yeah, this should be a game that he looks to, again, assert himself early. I think they need that. I think he's done the right thing in the first 3 games, kind of deferring a little bit early on. And then we know at the end of games, he'll always kind of take the ball back, right? But I think he's done the right thing there. But tonight is not one of those nights. Tonight's a night where I think he's got to get into the game early and look for his shot early. That's what I think. We'll see. They seem to have made it a point, especially in games 2 and 3, to get Cat the ball going or get the ball to Cat and get him going early. But I think this needs to be more of a Brunson-centric plan tonight. So we will see how that unfolds. And, I barely mentioned the bench other than, in terms of Mitchell Robinson starting in place of Josh Hart. But I think Cam Payne's been really rough in this series, which I know is not breaking news. I think he's been rough for most of this playoffs outside of game 1 against Detroit. I would be comfortable not playing him at all. I'd be comfortable just going with the 7-man rotation. And then the minutes Brunson sits are they're gonna be a struggle, but they've been a struggle anyway. I think if you just commit to the 7 guys you have, and when Brunson sits, theoretically you should only ever have one subpar defender in a lineup, which would be Cat, and hopefully you can kind of line up those minutes with Mitch Robinson if possible, still at the 5 or whatever. But the point is, regardless, you should really only have one bad defender on the floor in a scenario where Campaign's out of the rotation in the non-Brunson minutes. So I would go with that. I think Deuce has actually played decently. I believe that there are things he provides that are not box score related that are contributors to why the lineups where he is on the floor tend to be positive. His defense, I think, a point of attack helps. I know Pritchard got busy, but I thought that was, that wasn't really all on him or anything like that. And I think he's defended him relatively well. They don't have the type of ball handlers that I think give him trouble. And he's actually shot the ball decently in this series. Like I'm not ready to call it like a hot streak or something. But if you just look at his stats in this series, so again, this is just 3 games, but he was really struggling, right, with his shot throughout that Piston series. He's taken a total of 14 shots. He's 8 of 14 from the field in this series, 3 of 6 from 3 in game 1, 1 of 2 in game 2, 1 of 2 in game 3. He has not broken the 20-minute mark other than one time in his playoffs, which was game 5 against Detroit. I think this is a game where you can probably play him more. Again, I would be happy to just simply not play Campaign. He's been doing a lot of the play Campaign in the first half and then bench him in the second. I think just go with the 7-man rotation. Just have Deuce do it. Precious can come in at the 5 if you desperately needed another body for a couple of seconds, and really this is the only way I'd be using Precious, or if, either Cat or Mitch is in real foul trouble, something that you just need to go to. But yeah, I think this should be a 7-man rotation tonight. And I think Deuce can take all of Campaign's minutes. And I'm okay playing him a little bit more than 20, especially if he's shooting all right. Now they've got to do a better job of finding him, and he's got to do a better job of getting up shots when he has the opportunity to do so. But it seems like there's maybe an uptick here in his shooting. As bad as the Detroit series was, he's now 10 of 29 for the playoffs, 34.5% from 3. So that's how quick these things can change. I would go to him a little bit more, maybe. I think there's stuff that he's doing that's good and helping them on the floor in his minutes again. But I don't want to say it's small potatoes, but in the grand scheme of what could happen in this game and what buttons Tibbs is likely to press, it's probably small potatoes. So, that's kind of the look at, or my thoughts on this game tonight. What should the Knicks do? What can the Knicks do to kind of maybe turn the tide back. Turn the tide back in their favor. They took a gut punch in game 3, right? No question about it. But you have the leeway, the benefit, I guess, of winning the first 2 is now you can afford to have a gut punch loss at home and still be in credit, right? We saw this from Indiana last night. They took a big uppercut from Cleveland in game 3. And then they came back in game 4 and blew them the fuck out. Now, do I expect the Knicks to get blown or to blow out the Celtics? No, I don't. I think if the Knicks win this game, it's going to be a pretty tight game throughout. I don't think I think the odds of them being able to pull off another big time comeback is not realistic. And they have to, again, this is why we're talking about changing the starting lineup. You just can't keep putting yourself in these deficits. And by starting, that group at the start of each game, at the start of the second half, you're constantly giving that giving that a chance. I mean, look at what the Celtics did with Kristaps. Just look at it. Like, I know that he's dealing with whatever illness he's dealing with, but like, I mean, even if that is the reason why he got pulled from the starting lineup, their starting lineup with Kristaps has not been good this season. Their starting lineup with Al Horford's been excellent. One of the best lineups in basketball. They're getting that benefit simply because Joe Mazzulla has put Porzingis on the bench. So that's how, like, that's a significant move. It's why our starters, our bad lineup, is getting blitzed. And it's why game one, which, if you remember, right, game one, starters actually played well. They played well in the first half. They played well against Kristaps. They were much worse in the second half when Kristaps didn't start. That's when they went behind 20, right? That's when they went behind. So, like, since that point, these starting lineups, they haven't been close. Boston's destroyed the Knicks starters since then. It's time for the Knicks to flip the script, because they cannot get behind 20. That cannot happen again. If they go behind 20, you're not going to keep making 20-point comebacks. It's not realistic. Like, the miracle they even did it, right, in games 1 and 2. It's a reason why it's never happened before. But yeah, like, can't fall behind. I think this needs to be a tight game. I think this will be a tight game. I think the odds of that improve again if you start Mitch. But I think this will be a tight game. And, you know, I don't think Brunson's going to have like a 40 bomb tonight. But I do think that he is going to come out aggressive, and then I think he's going to close strong. And they're going to need it. They're going to need it. They're going to need it from everybody. This is an all-hands-on-deck type of game. And this is a bigger opportunity for this team and this franchise, but very specifically this regime, right? This Leon Rose, Tom Thibodeau regime that you have in place. This is a big moment. This is the biggest moment, I would say. You know, you made all these big-time moves this offseason, and really starting with the OG trade, right? You've made these big moves. You're pot committed. You went in on this concept of a team because I assume that one, the Knicks needed wings, and two, you're in the same conference as Boston, so you need wings to match up with them very specifically. You know, this is what you were hoping for, that this team would have a chance against a team as good as Boston. And they do. They have a chance in spite of themselves in some ways, right? In spite of the fact that they can't get up 3-point volume at all. The fact that they haven't really been that dominant on the glass. I mean, flat out, they lost the battle on the glass in the first 2 games. That really nobody offensively has really been able to get anything going consistently. I think there are signs with Brunson, but, you know, he had his first efficient scoring game last game. And it was a weird game, right? You know, the Knicks were kind of down and out for most of it. So not a high leverage situation. But yeah, like, you know, despite all of these things, the Knicks are here. They have the opportunity to steal this series in a lot of ways, you know, because before the series, again, Boston was a -900 favorite. And I don't think anybody I mean, there are very few people that I think can actually say that they believe the Knicks could win this series going into it, barring injury luck, right? Big time injury luck or something. But yeah, you know, they have the opportunity, and they are pretty healthy now. The Knicks, I mean, you know, they have all their guys that they need. They have everybody available. I know Cat may have broken the finger on his non-shooting hand, so credit to him for playing through it for the team. Definitely respect that. I don't respect whatever the hell he was doing offensively in the fourth quarter. I thought that was a disaster, almost as bad as the defensive issues that he had in the first half. I thought that was just as awful. So again, you know, but yeah, like, you know, in spite of that, in spite of the fact that I don't think Cat has really had that a great impact offensively, you know, I guess in game 2, he did have 21-17. That was a good game. And he did play Al Horford off the floor in the first half. But they need more from him than they got in game 3. That's for damn sure. On both ends of the floor. Even if you're not a great defender, you can't be a destructive defender. That's when you really have issues. Execute the plan. Execute the scheme cleanly. Know what the scheme is. These are all key components. And the Knicks got to, and again, talked a lot about cap, but they've just got to be more disciplined in everything. And offensively, they need to be smart. They need to be clean. Again, we talked about it with McCall. You got to come off these screens. You got to make some of these shots, but you got to shoot with confidence. He wasn't shooting with confidence in the first half. You're a good shooter, especially in the mid-range. Take the fucking shot with confidence. Josh has to play a smarter game. He can't wildly drive to the rim. He's got to crash the glass when it's appropriate, not when it makes no sense. He's got to time it better. There are way too many possessions where Brunson's in the paint, and for some reason, Cat's in a dunker spot, and Cart's also crashing down in the paint. It's like, why is the spacing like this? And they've got to figure that out. But he's got to be better. OG Anunoby has to give you anything offensively. I mean, he got outscored by Deuce in game 3. Deuce scored 5 points, by the way. So, you're not going to win like that. You're just not. He's got to be better. And they've got to help him be better. They've got to look for him. But, yeah, look, the Knicks have this chance. And it's a really, really big one. I think that they will be better set up next season. I think they'll have better depth. They have a better idea of what this team is. I think regardless of how this series goes, by the way, regardless of how it ends, my main goal going into the season was more or less I wanted the proof of concept of okay, this team can work. This roster construction with this group of players, you have an idea of, 1, can this work? And 2, how can this work? How can we improve it? How can we maximize it? And I think I have seen enough now to feel that way. I think there's a proof of concept here. So that was big for me. Now, getting back to the series, if you can get this done, again, big moment for Leon Rose and Tibbs. It's a real feather in your cap. And I think I don't want to say get too overboard, but I do think it'd be a landmark achievement for the Knicks, getting back to the Eastern Conference Finals. They have not been to the Eastern Conference Finals since 2000. They would have done it with a path that I think is legitimate, in terms of you're playing a Boston team that's healthy. Kristaps is what he is at this point. He has this weird illness. Aside from Sam Hauser being hurt doesn't really fucking matter. He was terrible in his little cameo in game 1 anyways. But you'd have beaten a relatively healthy Boston team. I think the Pistons team they beat in the first round is stronger than it may have seemed on paper. And you'd have a chance in the Eastern Conference Finals against either team. I think Cleveland has shown themselves to be vulnerable. They're also beat up, right? Mitchell, I don't know what's going on with him. Garland's toe and whatever else they're dealing with. They've shown themselves to be vulnerable, and they are beat up. Indiana is playing at a high level, but that's a team that I think the Knicks can compete with 100%, no doubt, right? I don't think there's doubt about that. And you would have the utmost confidence if you come through and beat Boston. So I think this is massive. This is, to me, a bigger game than game 3, because even if you lost game 3, you always had the opportunity, right, in game 4 to still keep the home court and give yourself the chance, or the guaranteed chance to at minimum have a game 6 opportunity on at the Garden to clinch the series. But yeah, it's all there for them. It's all there for them. I'm not saying it's there for the taking. I don't think that. I don't feel that any adjustment they make guarantees victory against Boston. I don't think that's the case. But I do think making no changes in terms of your personnel usage does guarantee that Boston wins this series. I do not think the Knicks can win this series playing the starting five as much as they have. So again, whether it's starting or making adjustments in game faster and sooner, they need it. It's not just about Mitch. They have combinations with Deuce also, right, that are just work better than any of the starting 5 minutes have been. They have a lot of good lineup combos. I think they have to explore that. They have to go through that. With those 7 guys, they have a good mix of lineups that they can get to. Use more of those. Be more varied. Give yourself the chance and execute the scheme. And that's on players. I think Tibbs has come up with a good scheme for this series. I think the players let him down in game 3 with how they executed defensively. So execute the plan. Make that happen. On the offensive side of the ball, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not expecting much here. Whatever issues I have with the offense, and I have many of them, we can revisit that in the offseason and maybe how the Knicks can go about improving. But right now, just don't be your own worst enemy. Don't be your own worst enemy. Keep good spacing principles. It's been a disaster for a lot of the season. It was better in games 1 and 2, to be honest. And I think the Knicks did get better shots in game 2 than they got in game 3. They just didn't make any of them. But stick with that. Don't stand on top of each other when you're behind the 3-point line. Don't crash in right as Brunson's getting into his drive into the paint. Be smart about this stuff. And yeah, guys can make more shots and whatever, but I'm not expecting a whole lot different schematically from what we have seen from them on offense. This is kind of what it is. And however good that is or bad it is, this is what they have right now on the offensive side of the ball. But, control what you can. You can control the personnel groupings that you're using, and you can control your execution and effort defensively as a team. If they control those things, they give themselves a chance. They give themselves a chance in the series and tonight. So just give yourself the chance. Keep giving yourself the opportunity. Keep making it hard for Boston. Keep letting, if it's a tight game, I think you feel good. That's all I'm saying. The Knicks have the better closer in the series. It's just a fact. They might have the best closer in basketball for all I know at this point. But they certainly have the best closer in this series. Let him be the best closer. Give him the opportunity, at least, to be the closer. If you lose at that point, you lose. But you want the chance. And you want to give yourself a chance. So we saw in games 1 and 2 when they were able to get him into those situations. He raised his game in the fourth quarter of both of those games. And the Knicks, as a team, were able to then capitalize on it and pull off some pretty great victories in Boston. Let's pull off a victory on home at your home court. I think at times that there's a little of anxiety of the crowd creeps into their play early in games and they get a little tight. But, you got to get over it. You got to get over it. You have to be confident in front of your home crowd. And you can't hesitate. If you hesitate against this Boston team, that's death. That's death. Because you're not going to get seconds to make decisions. You're not going to get, if you have a chance to get off a good shot, take it. Because if you hesitate, that chance is gone. They're too good defensively. They're too good on that side of the ball. And even amidst the next 2 wins, we saw that, right? Their defense was not the issue. Their offense was. If the Knicks can create turnovers, make them feel pressure better than they did in game 3, that'd be huge. Their best offense has come in open court situations. So turning them over was key to that. They need to get back to really making them feel pressure and getting more live ball stuff. But yeah, I mean, keep them off the glass too. I thought they were better about that in game 3, but also Boston made more shots, so maybe that's why it felt that way. Just need to do a better job of boxing out. I think especially the guards and Brunson. I thought Brunson game 3 he did box out well, but they've both Brunson and Hart have been susceptible, and Bridges have been susceptible to getting beat for boards because they're not boxing out. In Bridges' case, sometimes he's even boxing out. You just can't hold this guy off. Even Josh Hart struggled to hold off Al Horford on one of the offensive rebounds they gave up and put back they gave up to the Celtics in Game 3. So, clean that up. But yeah, if you can limit your turnovers, force them into turnovers, and then largely control the glass. If they can keep the Celtics from getting extra chance opportunities, I think they'll, if they do those things, you give yourself a chance, especially if you can kind of change how you're gonna play your lineups and rotations. So, yeah, I mean, I've said it repeatedly on here on this pod, like in this specific pod, but it's a big chance here for New York. There's no two ways about it. I think this is a big game for Tibbs. He's really hesitated to not to change anything with that starting group in his rotations in the past. He's shown a lot of admirable traits in this series in terms of doing a switch scheme, heavily switching as much as they are. He deserves a ton of credit for that. Again, the offense, if you want to criticize him for it, I think that's more than fair. I'm just kind of sick and tired of talking about it because I know what it is. This is what it is. This is what the offense is. It's not going to change right now. But the fact that you did switch the scheme, that's half the battle. The other half, I think, is maximizing your personnel groupings. If you want it to be a rock fight, play your best rock fighting lineups. And your best rock fighting lineups are certainly not that starting lineup. So that's what it is. Turn it into a rock fight. See if you can win the rock fight. See if Jalen Brunson can win you another rock fight. That's it. Win the game. I'm going to predict the Knicks win. Who the fuck actually knows? If they make the changes I think most people are asking for to the lineup, they'll have a really good chance. They'll have a really good chance of pulling it off. Let's see if it happens. All right. That is our show for today. I'm not sure who's on the post game for tonight. I doubt I will be, but you never say never. Yeah, check out all the work at the Strickland podcast, the articles, whatever. All right. That is our show for today. I hope everybody has a great week. I hope the Knicks have a great evening and are able to give us a great evening. And yeah, that's it. All right. That is our show for today. Again, hope everybody has a great week. And I'll see you on Friday. Peace.